Welcome back to Autism Live. Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson and I are here with a very special guest, Emily Iland, that we want to welcome to the show. Emily, I don't even know where to begin to introduce you because you're a mom, you're an advocate, you're an author, you're the president of the Autism Society. I was going to say the Awesome Autism Society.
The Awesome Autism Society of Los Angeles, yeah.
You have credentials, and I was saying during the break, do you feel like you've been a pioneer 3 times? Because that's what it feels like to me, that you have been a pioneer 3 times.
Right. The first time was in the school system when my son was on the high-functioning end of the spectrum, he still is, and the school district really didn't get kids like that back in the 90s and didn't really know what to do with him, and really were resistant to the notion that he even needed help. So I had to pave the path there, and one thing I found out is I had to get informed as a mother. I had to get all the information I could to then bring it back to others, and they would listen. You know, if you have facts, people listen to facts.
It is true.
So I had to really get educated very quickly about what autism was, how it affected my son, so I could explain. Then I had to get educated about how to navigate the system, how the service systems work. So I took formal training on that, and I became an advocate, and I helped a lot of people for free for a long time because I wasn't sure. I wanted to really feel that I knew what I was doing. So for 3 years, I worked as an advocate for free.
I'm pretty sure that you helped me during that 3 years when you were, because I know you and I had a phone conversation that was helpful to me, and you didn't charge me, so I think that's when I found you.
How did you do all this with a son on the spectrum and advocating for others? That's a huge thing to take on, and as we know from experience, and you get very burnt out. How did you do that?
Well, I was able to handle it for 7 years when I worked as a professional advocate. Went to grad school, had my 3 kids and my husband at home. Did all my volunteering and all those things. I just kind of never sleep, and I work 7 days a week.
Okay.
But I ended up feeling like it was too much, so I stepped back from advocacy. But I helped 300 families for 10 years. But it's all about understanding how the system works, being factual, and being persistent. And my son Tom says, my mom has a motto, and it's never take no for an answer.
It's a great motto.
And, you know,
take us back a little bit and tell us a little bit about your story. I'm always fascinated, aren't you, Nancy?
Yes.
And how you got diagnosed and what happened.
Your son's 28 now?
Yes, he's 28.
And what's his name?
Tom.
Tom. Okay. Yeah, take us back.
Well, Tom had signs of autism when he was a very little boy, and I thought they were all related to how bright he was, because he could read and spell when he was 3.
Hyperlexic.
We now call that hyperlexia. And I thought everything was about that. So if he didn't play with the other kids, why would he when he could read?
Right.
You know, if he didn't play with toys, well, he was interested in his books. And I really used that for my explanation for everything. But my sister Barbara Doyle was the Illinois State Consultant for Autism at the time. And she was saying, well, do you notice this? Do you notice that? And I would say, why are you picking on us? Why do you think there's something wrong with my son? So I was very resistant. So she backed off. And that way I could come to her when the preschool teacher says he won't sit for story time, and the first grade teacher says he only wants to be on the computer, and I could go to her and she could give me the input, and I took it. But we kind of had ruled out autism because Tom did not have mental retardation, and back in the 80s that was part of it. A cognitive disability was part of the diagnosis, and so they ruled it out really when we had discussed it with some people in the field. But in 1994 she called and said, hey, I found this thing in the new diagnostic manual and you need to read it. Well, by this time we were having so many struggles, and the other kids were being so cruel to Tom at school that we were desperate for help, and I was very open to it. Went straight down to UCLA that day, you know, get the soonest appointment I could, and Tom got a diagnosis from UCLA at 14.
Of high-functioning autism or Asperger's?
High-functioning autism because he had a language delay. He stopped talking for several months. Okay. So the regression. Yeah. So that's why I used to be a separator and think they're so different. Yeah. And now I'm a lumper. Dr. Ritvo taught me that at the time of diagnosis. He says, look, doesn't everyone on the spectrum need help with socialization, communication, and behavior? Even though it might look a little different, what kind of help they need, don't they all need that? So why are we spending all this time arguing about how they're different when they really need the same things?
I so agree, and you know, for us to be really just splitting hairs, I have so many parents that say, some of the struggles of a very high-functioning child or a child with Asperger's are really so much more intense than the struggles of those with lower-functioning children, and we have to be aware of that.
Well, we have to join together as one community, and you know who's taught me that lesson is a mother of a child who is high-functioning and low-functioning. She says, you know, both of them cost her heart so much heartache in different ways, but for the same reasons. So, you know, the next diagnostic manual is going to put the spectrum together into autism spectrum disorders, and there's resistance to that because people think, well, my identity is my Asperger's, but maybe their identity is being a person. Their Asperger's describes some of their characteristics and features. It's really not their identity, it's what they're used to calling themselves, so they can certainly continue to call themselves, you know, someone with Asperger's, but for official purposes, the separation is not working diagnostically. There's confusion, there's all sorts of problems and inconsistency. So it's not workable as it is. That's why they're changing it.
Yeah, and we need workable. So tell us how you had this son, you become an advocate, you learn the system. How did that lead to you becoming president of the Autism Society of Los Angeles?
Well, they reached out to me and, you know, said, would you help us? Would you be our secretary? Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Remember that. Just a little, you know, easy job. Well, I ended up then being the vice president and then the president. So, but it was also part of my own professional development. I wrote a book with my sister, the one who knew autism from the get-go.
And what was that book?
Autism Spectrum Disorders from A to Z.
Which is also available in Espanol.
I translated it myself.
Which is awesome.
It took me 660 hours. And that's called Autism Spectrum Disorders.
So that's a great resource for parents.
Yes, because Barbara and I wrote it to answer the 1,000 questions that a new parent has. What is this? Why did it happen? Is this my fault? What do I do now? What kind of help does my child need? How do I deal in my family? How do I explain it to my child? Tom helped me write a section on how to explain autism to your child. And that's fabulous. That's kind of lost. The book is so huge, people don't know these little gems are in there. My daughter helped me write a section on sibling issues and family balance. It's all in there. And then I translated into Spanish because there is a huge need in the Latino community.
And are both copies, both English and Spanish, available on Amazon?
They are, and also autismo.org is my website in Spanish. And that's a good place to get the Spanish book because I offer a discount there.
But you also have another book.
I do. It's called Drawing a Blank. And
which I want.
It's about, I'll make sure you get a copy. It's about reading comprehension because Tom has a lot of accomplishments and skills, and he's a certified public accountant.
I was reading that. Congratulations to him.
Thank you. He worked so hard. But one day, when he was at CSUN and I was at CSUN getting my master's in special ed, he came home and said, Mom, I had this test today, but I couldn't answer the question because I didn't know what the word conservative meant. He knew how to do the problem, but he didn't know what conservative meant, so then he couldn't do it. So I thought, gosh, how is he going to pass the CPA exam if he doesn't know the vocabulary? And how hidden of a problem is this that he could get all the way through his 4th year of college without realizing this vocabulary gap was there. So I researched it, I studied it, I took all the advanced reading courses at CSUN, but really nobody was talking about this problem. So I did an independent study and looked at every existing piece of research I could find and wrote a book.
Well, fabulous. And that's also available on Amazon.com.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. We should take a break.
We should take a break, and when we come back, I want you to give us the mission of the Autism Society Los Angeles, and then let's get into this issue that you have really been in the forefront of, which is young adults and adults on the spectrum and the future. Job opportunities, education, vocational training. What are we going to do about this? What's available? You're really right there. So let's talk about that when we come back, okay?
I sure will.
Okay, great.
Stick with us.
The Autism Society exists to improve the lives of all affected by autism. We work to increase public awareness about the day-to-day issues faced by people on the spectrum, advocate for appropriate services for individuals across their lifespan, and provide the latest information regarding treatment, education, research, and advocacy. For more information, visit www.autismsociety.org.
Hi, we're back with Emily Iland, who is president of the Autism Society Los Angeles, and she was just telling us about her journey with her son Tom and how she became an advocate, and really necessity is the mother of invention, isn't it, Emily?
That's right.
And you became an expert in the field and an advocate, and then you were kind of drafted to lead Autism Society of Los Angeles. And tell us exactly, what is the mission?
Our mission is to serve all affected by autism. So we focus on the whole family, and we include the professionals who are part of the team. So we try to educate and support everybody affected by autism, not just the individuals. And in fact, a lot of our education and programs are for parents and teachers, and we don't really give direct service at this time to individuals on the spectrum, but we guide people to where the resources are.
Right.
Our website is going to be fantastic. It's under construction, but it's by age group. So you just go into your age group. So if you've got a preschooler, everything you need to know.
Well, you
right
do have that now. I love
Yes.
your puzzle pieces.
Yes.
You have 0 to 3, then
That's
you've got the preschooler, then you've got the elementary school, then you've got middle school,
Yes.
high school, young adults, and I find that very helpful for parents that want to go right to where they can get the resources.
Exactly, and we're fleshing it out right now. I'm adding content to it, and I just finished the section on adults.
Okay.
So it's my perspective and what I would share, and of course my board supports me in adding this information from experience.
And how did this come about? Not just from experience. Did you find there was a real demand from your constituency, so to speak, to say, what are we going to do for our kids as they get older?
Well, there is beginning to have that demand, and people didn't realize when you're on autopilot and your kid's in a good place because you know how the school system works, or maybe in junior high or elementary school, and you've figured out how to work with your district and where the services are for a child, you kind of get comfortable. And then all of a sudden people are panic and say, my kid's 16 and they want to give him a diploma, and my kid's 22 and now what happens? And they panic very late in the game.
Yeah.
And so that's what's happening. So we're trying to say to families, let's talk about this now and let's be planful, because you wouldn't let your other child just go through high school and wonder what's going to happen next.
Right.
You're having
That's
them
true.
take the right courses so they can get into the right college, and you have a plan, and it's very clear. But we're afraid to plan for our kids with autism because we don't know what the future is going to be like, and so we thought, oh, I don't want to go there.
And we're afraid and we're petrified that there's going to be part of the future we won't be with them.
That's right.
And we have been their primary advocates as their parents. And when we're gone, what's going to happen? I think that's the greatest fear of all.
It's absolutely, but it's something you can control while you're here rather than leaving it to fate. But people are passing through these years without a plan, like say from 14 to 22. They're not really planning for the future. When the transition process is in place and could be wonderful and productive, but it's not. I heard you talking about research, and do you know there's no research to show whether transition plans are affected? The U.S. Department of Ed said they do not have any research about the effectiveness of transition.
Well, isn't that frightening?
Very. So what we still have, it has fabulous potential. The transition plan can be absolutely wonderful and productive, but people don't understand it well enough to take advantage of all it could be.
Okay.
So we know we have a problem. There's not enough preparation on the part of parents,
That's it.
professionals. How is Autism Society of Los Angeles dealing with this problem?
Well, we've started a new support group called The Future is Now.
Okay.
Because all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, my kid has grown up.
Yes.
When did that happen?
Right.
So now is the future. This time we should have been planning for. It's now, so what do? So we're trying to connect families to the resources, and we're trying to give them information about the transition plan. In fact, we're having another conference January 10th and 11th at Cal State Northridge. We're working with Family Focus Resource and Empowerment Center to talk about this. If you come to the conference, you will learn how to write a good transition plan, what it should look like, and how to connect to those resources and organizations that you need to be connecting to. I felt at transition like I was jumping off a cliff with a blindfold on, or maybe being pushed off a cliff.
Transition meaning the time that Tom was leaving high school.
Right. And if I thought, well, if I've written 2 books and I'm an advocate and I'm in the dark, how about everybody else?
Yeah.
And what is the outcome when we leave things to chance and to fate and we haven't planned carefully?
Usually disastrous.
So we want to prevent all that by educating parents and professionals how to write good plans. And one of our goals is to connect people to those agencies and organizations and service providers that are out there doing some wonderful work.
So you're going to do this with, you've got a conference in January.
Yes.
They can go to your website, which is
autismla.org.
autismla.org, and you've got the support groups that are coming up, and where are those being held?
At Michael's Place.
Okay.
And that's also on our website and on our Facebook page. Please like us on Facebook.
Okay.
And you'll get all this news if you like us on Facebook.
Great.
And it's Autism Society of Los Angeles on Facebook?
Autism LA.
Autism
Made
LA.
it easier.
Okay.
Now, for some of the parents out there, because we are all over, you know, we're all over the country, and we're international, aren't we?
Yes, we are. 102 countries.
So do you have some advice for parents just in general about this transition time, what they need to be on the lookout for, and what should be sort of in their to-do list?
Right. Well, actually, I have 2 family members with autism now because Tom lives with his girlfriend who also has autism.
Okay.
Interesting.
So she's part of our family now, and she has never received services until she became part of our family.
Wow.
She never had any supports. So one message is it's never too late, because at 27, she became a client of the Regional Center. And she's getting in-home support and help with her career development, because she was a girl who was sitting on the sofa with nothing to do and nowhere to go. And that is a fate we do not want for people with wonderful potential to have a better life than that.
But it's never too late. I love
just
that.
gonna say.
For everybody that's listening today, what you just said is so important, because there's such an emphasis on early intervention. There's such an emphasis on recovery now. And for those parents who were, you know, had children that were born in the 90s and the 80s, you know, this is not possibly an option for them. They get discouraged.
Right.
And we want to empower them with the message that it is never too late.
That's right. And, you know, don't take no for an answer. Like, you're going to have to be persistent. You're going to have to get educated. But is it worth it? Is it worth it to know that your child's going to be safe after you're gone and have a good life?
Of course it is.
So you do have to get up and pull yourself up by the bootstraps, even if you feel defeated, or, you know, you have to be hopeful for your child and their potential, and then make those connections. And, you know, the Autism Society, we're leading the way, because most of us do have older kids, although we also have some grandparents on our board of directors who have a young, so we have the whole perspective, but we have a lifetime of experience as well in our leadership.
What do you think are the biggest issues? Vocational training, college, living, are they all kind of a level playing field?
They're
are they
all as equally important.
Okay.
80% of people with autism are underemployed or unemployed. 80%.
80%.
Which, you know, considering the talent pool that's there,
Absolutely.
it's I find that a huge problem, because then where do you live if you have no money? And, you know, we should expect our children to be able to make a living. You know, if that's our expectation, we're going to work real hard to make it happen and make the connections. There are resources, but it's very hard to use them until you learn how to navigate the system. So that's something the Autism Society is trying to help with, and Family Focus is our partner trying to help younger families. And then once they're 22, it's kind of, they come to us because other organizations don't have much experience.
So let's give them your website again, where they can find out about the conference, and the Facebook page name again.
autismla.org. That's our Facebook page and our website.
Okay, great. And we also had somebody write in and say that the Spanish language website for your site is actually elautismo.org.
That's
so
right.
Our viewers will correct us even when we're
Okay, great.
So we're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back and talk about more topics with Emily Iland. If you have questions or things that you want to know about, please take a moment to write them in right now. Stick with us. Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We're joined right now by our wonderful guest, Emily Iland, who is a wealth of information. As we said before, she is a pioneer 3 times over. We're so thrilled to have you here with us, sharing information.
And she's president of the Autism Society of Los Angeles, and the Autism Society of Los Angeles has really made it their cause to help transitions for for kids on the spectrum that are aging upward, that are becoming young adults and adults, and where does that leave them, right,
Yes,
Emily?
exactly.
Because there has not been enough focus on this. You're trying to help families navigate that transition. And we wanted to talk about conservatorship. What happens when your child turns 18? As you said, maybe you've got them in a great high school program, they've maybe got social skills, they've got a great program at school, maybe they've got they're in part-time, maybe in special day class, maybe they have an aide, maybe they're getting good grades, things come along, they're great, and then all of a sudden, high school ends.
Right. Well, the first thing to know about when your child turns 18 is they are responsible for signing their own IEP, and you lose your rights as a parent in the IEP process unless your child decides to share them with you.
Okay.
So it's no longer up to you whether to approve the goals, the services, the placement. It's up to your child, who's now 18, they're an adult. And now what do we know about developmental disabilities? A person whose calendar age says 18 doesn't mean that developmentally they're ready to take on all adult responsibilities. So this is why it's important for families to know about this and make arrangements before that 18th birthday so that you can continue to share in your child's educational rights. Because if you don't, they can sign themselves out of special ed and leave school. For example, if they thought that was a good idea, and you have 0 rights.
Wow.
And most people don't know that. So that's one that was really, really important. The other thing is your child who's an adult at 18 also can sign a contract, can be drafted into the, or not, we don't have draft, but they can join the military without your permission. And every high school gives every telephone number of every student in the high school, with or without disabilities, to the
recruiters,
to the inscription. So every boy in high school gets called and asked to come down to the, the Army office and join. And I walked in the kitchen when that conversation was going on, and I said, "Who are you on the phone with?" And Tom said, "The Army. They want me to come down to the office and sign up tomorrow." Well, I know people with autism who have joined the Army at 18, and their parents can't get them out. Because they're legally adults, and there was no process or paperwork in place to show that the person might have had limited judgment or less understanding. They're an adult at 18.
Right.
So we really need to get these processes, these protective processes in place. The shared educational rights, you don't need a lawyer, you just write something up and your student signs it.
Okay.
To continue to share. And when I asked Tom, I said, "Tom, have I done a good job for you as your advocate and helping you with the process? Would you like me to continue?" Okay, then you need to sign this paper, and that way I can continue to help you as I have in the past.
Does that paper have to be, where can that paper be?
We just wrote that out.
You wrote it up. You don't necessarily need an attorney to do it.
No, not for that.
Okay.
For conservatorship, it's where you're asking to continue to take care of some of your child's adult rights. You're asking to conserve your right to decision making in certain areas, such as health care, financial, and all different areas like that, which are divided by believe it or not, you have to go to probate court to get this done.
Interesting.
A conservatorship.
Okay.
And you can ask, okay, and you can demonstrate the need. Someone could take all his money and he wouldn't know how to defend himself. He would sign a contract without understanding. He needs assistance now with his health care. I think he needs continued assistance. So you make your case.
Okay.
If the person agrees, the person who's going to be conserved in those areas agrees, there's usually no trouble at all.
So this is done in probate court. And at what age do you suggest this be
I would
implemented?
start at the 17th birthday.
Okay.
And on our website, we're going to have information about how to get this done. There are attorneys who specialize in this, but there's also a nonprofit called, I think it's called BETCEDIC.
Okay.
And they have offices in Norwalk and Pasadena, and they're a nonprofit that helps with this process.
Great, because not everybody can afford those attorney fees. This is, who is this another question of those who are going to be left out that don't have the resources?
Exactly.
We want to make sure that everybody's
We're
protected.
so grateful that BETCEDIC is taking on this work, because what if we don't conserve our children who are adults? What could happen to them? And when you say you're worried about when you're gone, if you have no conservatorship, then who's going to help with the decision making? And we clearly want people with autism once they're adults and even before that to have choices and decisions, and that the plans we make are in their best interest and reflect their own desires, and that they would have the chance for self-determination. At the same time, we have to protect them where they need protecting.
Absolutely.
I always feel that it's unfair to call us helicopter parents. If we're hovering over an adult, it's usually because they need someone to hover for a while until we get everything in place that they're cared for and safe without us hovering.
Okay.
It's wonderful, wonderful advice.
Great advice. There's so much to talk about here. I really would love to get into education because I think so many parents don't know what possibilities, what opportunities are out there for their children's education, continuing education, community college and university. Is that something that you are going to be providing answers on?
I'm very interested in both of those topics. Everyone who wants to have post-secondary education should have access to different types of programs, and community colleges and universities are beginning to step up to the plate. There are some private organizations providing support and independent living education, but they're quite expensive.
Yes.
However, they may be covered by Regional Center and Department of Rehabilitation, which is surprising to some people.
And are there universities and colleges out there that are in the forefront of this, that are leading the way with having kids on the spectrum, young adults on the spectrum, have great programs for them?
I would say they're coming. I would say that the colleges and universities, especially in our area in Los Angeles, they're trying to develop some things, and new things are coming and happening. The Help Group has a new program this year.
Yes.
And there's other things coming. There's a few little centers of brilliance around the country where they're really getting the hang of it. But I would have to say most universities are so accustomed to supporting people with sensory impairment like deafness and blindness, or people with learning disabilities. They don't really understand the scope of support that's required for someone with a social communication disorder and behavioral differences. The support is different. And I have another perspective on that. I'm a professor at Cal State Northridge. So I've had people with autism in my class. So I understand their struggle when the system's not necessarily designed for their needs.
I've heard about some unique programs where they are taking graduate students and pairing them as aides with, so they're getting credit for their program, where the child is getting the proper support, or the young adult is getting the proper support in their undergraduate program.
And there are agencies that also provide that support, not necessarily through the university, but I'm familiar with Tierra del Sol Foundation. And their Nexus program, they have young people close in age to the people in college, supporting them at college. So I'm very impressed with that program. That's just one of many. I don't know every program, so I'm not leaving anyone out intentionally, but I'm quite familiar with Nexus, and they've had tremendous success. So.
And then, of course, housing is such a huge issue for families. You know, most of these young adults end up living with the parents, don't they?
Well, and that's not a great idea forever. The parent should try and find a place for the young person to go while they're still living and can manage it. But I'll tell you something I did that was really smart that maybe people could do today because of the housing market. In 1999, when Tom was 15, I bought him a condo. And I said, someday, Tom, you're going to live there. It has 2 bedrooms. We don't know who's going to be in the other bedroom. Could be a staff person, could be a mentor, could be a roommate. We never thought it would be a girl. but that is actually the best outcome I could wish for.
Of course. It's what we all want our children to have, romantic relationships
a life of
and jobs.
Their own.
Yes.
So we rented it out, and we told the renters, when Tom's ready, he's going to come live here, and this is his house. And that was when the market was really, really low, and we had the opportunity to buy that place for him, rent it out. The mortgage is almost paid off at this point, and he has a place to live. So, you know,
that's wonderful. Not all families have that option, and you know that.
I do know that, but people don't think maybe they should get with another family and buy a place, or 3 families buy a place when their kids are only 12 right now. People don't think ahead like that, and I just got lucky, but it was one of the best things I could have done. And so we have to think ahead of where they're going to live, but not think about it, where they're going to live tomorrow or next week. Where are they going to live in 10 years, and how are we going to get there?
Absolutely. Emily, we could talk about so many things.
And, you know,
you'll have to promise us that you'll come back.
Sure, I will.
Please. And once again, the support groups, when do they start?
Our next one is, we're going to meet on Tuesday, September 11th, and the topic is sexuality and adolescence and adult issues in sexuality and sex.
Okay.
And I'm the speaker.
Big one.
And a very popular topic. It goes very well. We have.
Okay.
We have to talk about two more things before you leave. One, I know that you just you were nominated for an award by your son.
Yes. The Single Mother Outreach has an Iconic Woman Award, and I don't know how I'm ever going to live up to that title, but I won an Iconic Woman Award, and there's going to be festivities taking place in Santa Clarita around that, and one of the parts of it is that an artist is going to make an oil a painting inspired by my story, or my family story.
Wonderful.
So I think that's a huge honor, and I'm very humbled.
And you deserve it.
Oh, thank you.
And one more thing, and then we really have to let you go. But somebody has written in and asked, and I should have thought of this as well. Talk a little bit about your work with law enforcement.
Yes, I'm the lead trainer for the Autism Society with the LAPD. We've trained over 4,000 officers, and we developed a curriculum and we presented it, and we also put on an event in April where we brought in 100 kids on the spectrum from LAUSD to meet officers one-on-one. First, we trained the officers on what autism was and did some experiential learning with them with the Awareness in a Box program, and then the officers hung out with kids, had lunch, and then they took them through some safety stations that we designed.
Wonderful.
Including letting them get strapped to a gurney and load backwards into an ambulance, and a section we called Officer Simon Says that teaches them to follow the instructions. I'm working with Joy Travolta on a program regarding that on my consulting side of my life. I'm working on a project on adult safety with the police, a film and curriculum coming out on that.
Wow.
Okay. Well, you are just... you're prolific, and you know, if ever there was an example of be the change you want to see in the world, you are it.
Oh, thank you. That's
And
so
thank you for being here today.
Absolutely.
And we want you to come back, and we'll do more before the conference. Maybe we can have one of your guest speakers come and talk to us about maybe more in depth some of these issues.
And that's going to be at Cal State Northridge on January 10th and 11th.
January 10th and 11th. We'll have to have someone come back on, maybe you and a speaker, to talk about some of the issues you're going to deal with particularly.
And if you have questions for Emily in the coming weeks, you can send them to us and we'll forward them on to Emily as well. So please know that if you're watching a taped version of this, that you can still ask questions and we'll get them to Emily. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Good luck to you. Thank you for the work you're doing on behalf of our special kids.